Flight 912 lifted off the runway like any ordinary journey. The sun was bright, the sky was clear, and the passengers settled into their seats with relaxed smiles. Drinks were served early, kids played games on tablets, and the hum of the engines created a comforting background. No one on board knew their fate would soon depend on a 12-year-old girl who had never touched a real airplane control in her life. Her name was Mia Carter, a quiet, polite girl traveling alone to visit her father for the summer. She sat in row 14, window seat, her legs swinging above the floor. Her backpack was full of things normal kids carry, but with a twist. Inside were pencils, snacks and headphones, but also aviation magazines, a flight simulator manual, and a notebook filled with cockpit drawings. For a girl her age, Mia knew more about airplanes than most adults. Her uncle, James Carter, was a retired pilot. Every weekend, he let Mia sit beside him in his old training cockpit at home. She practiced takeoffs, studied emergency procedures, memorized gauges and buttons, and even landed a simulated jet during storm training. But Mia never imagined those weekends would mean anything in real life. Inside the cockpit, Captain Hughes and First Officer Reed were discussing fuel calculations and route changes. The weather report showed clear skies all the way to their destination. Everything was normal until the strange smell. It was faint at first, a sharp metallic scent that slid into the air vents. The captain frowned. "Do you smell that?" he asked. Reed sniffed the air. "Yeah, what is that?" Before he could finish, the captain coughed, a deep, choking cough. His eyes watered. Reed felt his own chest tighten. He tried to breathe deep, but his lungs burned. "What's happening?" he gasped. The captain reached for the oxygen mask, but didn't make it. His hands trembled. His eyes rolled back. He collapsed. Reed's vision blurred. He reached for the emergency radio, his fingers barely touching the switch. "Day!" He fell forward. Within 30 seconds, both pilots were unconscious. The plane shifted slightly. The nose dipped by just a few degrees, but enough for passengers to feel it. In the cabin, a woman clutched her armrest. "Did we just drop?" A baby began crying. Drinks slid across tray tables. A man in row 9 pressed the call button, confused. But flight attendant Laura Benson, a woman with 8 years of experience, felt something deeper. Something was wrong. She headed toward the cockpit and knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Her heart thumped. She grabbed the emergency override key and opened the door. When the cockpit door swung open, her breath caught in her throat. Both pilots were slumped in their seats. Warning alarms blinked and flashed. The plane drifted off course. "Oh my God," she whispered. She ran back to the intercom, panic tightening her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone on board with flying experience? Anyone at all? Please come forward immediately." Passengers looked around at each other. A businessman shook his head. A young couple held hands. No one stood up. Laura felt her stomach drop. Then came a small, soft voice. I can help." Everyone turned. There, standing slowly from row 14, was Mia. She was clutching her aviation notebook to her chest, her face pale but determined. Laura blinked. "Sweetheart, do you have flying experience?" Mia swallowed. "Not real flying, but I know how the cockpit works. I can stabilize the plane. I practice at home." Some passengers murmured. "She's just a kid. This is crazy. Is there truly no one else?" Laura didn't have time to argue. The plane tilted again, making passengers scream. She grabbed Mia's hand. "Come with me!" When they entered the cockpit, Mia felt her legs tremble. The alarms were louder inside. Red lights flashed across the panel. The autopilot button blinked angrily. But Mia didn't freeze. Her brain switched into the mode she had practiced for years. "Autopilot is disengaged," she whispered, "and we're losing altitude." Laura stared at her. "How do you know that?" "I've studied this a lot." She stepped forward and placed her small hands on the yoke. She adjusted it gently, remembering her uncle's voice. "Slow, steady movements. Trust the instruments. Feel the nose of the plane." The plane began to level out. Passengers felt the shift and gasped as the aircraft steadied. For a moment, hope returned. Mia put on the pilot headset. "This is Flight 912, she said, her voice shaking. "Both pilots are unconscious. I'm trying to fly the aircraft." No response. Static came through the radio. She tried again. Nothing. Her eyes scanned the radio panel. Then she spotted the problem. The frequency was wrong. She rotated the knob to the emergency channel. "Mayday, mayday," she said. "This is Flight 912. I am a passenger. Pilots are unconscious. I am controlling the aircraft." A moment of silence. Then a calm voice replied, "Flight 912, this is air traffic control. Who am I speaking with?" Mia hesitated. "My name is Mia. I'm 12. There was a long pause. Even the controller didn't speak for several seconds. Then his voice softened. "Okay, Mia, listen carefully. You're doing a brave thing. We're going to help you. Keep the wings level. Maintain your current altitude for now." Mia nodded, though her hands trembled. Laura quickly found portable oxygen masks. The chemical leak that knocked out the pilots was still active, and oxygen levels in the cockpit were falling fast. "Mia, put this on," Laura said, handing her a mask. Mia pulled it over her face and tightened the straps. But then a new alarm beeped, a harsh, unfamiliar warning. Mia looked up. "What's that?" Laura checked the screen. "It's the autopilot system. It's failing." Air traffic control came through, more urgent now. "Mia, you won't be able to rely on..." The storm ahead grew darker by the second. Thick clouds gathered like giant walls, and lightning flashed deep inside them. Mia's hands tightened on the yoke. She had flown through storms on a simulator, but never in real life, at 28,000 feet, with hundreds of lives depending on her. "Air traffic control," Mia said, her voice trembling. "There's a storm right in front of us." The controller responded calmly. "We see it on the radar, Mia. You need to descend below it. Bring the plane down to 12,000 feet. I'll guide you." Mia nodded even though they couldn't see her. She gently pushed the yoke forward and lowered the throttle. The plane began to descend. Passengers felt the sudden drop, and panic rippled through the cabin. Some cried, some prayed, others held on to each other. But there was also hope, because despite everything, the plane was controlled, steady, and moving with purpose. Laura placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. "You're doing great. I'm right here." Mia took a shaky breath. "Okay, altitude decreasing, speed stable." Her eyes darted across the instruments, checking one gauge after another, just like she practiced with her uncle. Air traffic control spoke again, guiding her step by step. "Mia, when you reach 12,000 feet, turn 5 degrees left. That will move you around the thickest part of the storm." Lightning lit up the sky in a white flash. Thunder rattled the cockpit windows. But Mia didn't panic. She made the turn smoothly. When the plane dipped into the edges of the storm, wind pushed them to the side. The plane shook violently, sending passengers into screams. Overhead, bins rattled. A bag fell into the aisle, and the seatbelt signs blinked rapidly. The storm roared outside, but Mia gripped the controls tight and fought the wind. Hold on, come on." The controller spoke urgently. "You're doing fine. Keep the wings level. Don't fight the wind too hard. Just ease into the correction." Mia eased the yoke, adjusting gently. The plane stabilized again. They cleared the worst part of the storm after 3 painful minutes. 3 minutes that felt like hours. "We're through," Mia whispered, her voice shaking with relief. "We see that, Mia," the controller said. "You're doing incredible. Now listen carefully. We're guiding you to Lakefront International Airport. Weather is clear there, and emergency crews are already standing by." "Okay," Mia said softly. "Tell me what to do." The controller gave her the new heading. Mia switched the navigation screen, watching the small arrow turn toward the airport. The city lights appeared faintly in the distance through the broken clouds. "Mia," the controller said gently, "in a few minutes, you're going to start your final descent." Mia's heart pounded. Final descent. Landing, the hardest part. Laura sensed her fear and knelt beside her. "Your uncle trained you for this. You can do it." Mia nodded slowly. "He always said landing is about patience, not panic." "Right," Laura whispered. The airport was only 10 minutes away now. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, fire trucks, ambulances, every eye on the ground watching the radar. The controller spoke with calm precision. "Mia, begin your descent to 3,000 feet. Reduce your speed. Put the flaps down 1 level." Mia moved the flaps lever exactly as she practiced at home. The plane slowed smoothly. "Good," the controller said. "Now switch on your landing lights." She flipped the switch. The runway appeared in the far distance, 2 long white lines shining like a path of hope. "Okay, Mia," the controller continued. "This part is all you. I'll guide you with words, but you control the landing." Mia swallowed. "I'm ready." Passenger silence filled the cabin. No one moved. Everyone listened to the tiny girl in the cockpit who was flying their plane. "Keep your wings level. Lower your nose just a little. Good." Mia followed every instruction. At 2,000 feet, the wind pushed them again. The plane shook. Mia adjusted carefully. At 1,500 feet, the runway grew larger. At 1,000 feet, her legs trembled, but she kept steady. "Mia," the controller said, "start pulling back very slowly. Let the plane glide." She pulled gently. At 500 feet, alarms beeped loudly. "Too fast," Laura gasped. Mia didn't panic. She remembered a trick her uncle taught her, small, precise movements. She reduced the throttle gradually. The plane slowed. The runway was rushing toward them. "Hold, hold, hold," the controller said. Mia's breathing grew shallow. Her eyes locked on the numbers painted on the runway. "Now, flare the nose, just a little." She pulled back lightly. The wheels touched the ground. A soft bump, then another. The plane landed. Passengers erupted in screams, not of fear but of joy. People cried, hugged, clapped, prayed out loud. The entire aircraft shook with applause. But Mia wasn't finished yet. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. "Keep rolling." The controller said, "Apply the brakes slowly, not too hard." She pressed the pedals gently. The plane slowed, and finally came to a complete stop. Silence filled the cockpit. Mia sat stiff, hands frozen on the controls. She couldn't believe it. Laura burst into tears. "You did it! You did it!" Fire crews rushed toward the plane. The cockpit door opened as emergency teams entered and attended to the unconscious pilots, who were quickly given oxygen. A paramedic knelt beside Mia. "You're the bravest kid I've ever seen." Passengers lined up crying, thanking her as she walked out with Laura holding her hand. When they stepped off the plane, the entire runway crew applauded. Reporters rushed to the airport, cameras flashed, but Mia hid her face shyly behind her notebook. She didn't want fame. She just wanted to call her dad. Hours later, after the pilots were treated and stable, Air Traffic Control requested to speak with her. The same controller who guided her came forward. He